What if everything you thought about death was wrong? What if, instead of being the end, it was actually a doorway, one that we could learn to navigate? The Tibetan Book of the Dead, also known as the Bardo Thodol, is an ancient guide that reveals what happens after we die in stunning detail. It describes the exact moments when the soul leaves the body, the visions it encounters, and the hidden opportunity for enlightenment that most people miss. But here's the shocking part. What happens in the afterlife isn't random. The mind creates its own reality, and our level of awareness determines whether we break free or get trapped in the cycle of rebirth. Sounds like something out of a mystical text. Well, modern science is starting to find striking parallels between these teachings and near-death experiences. In this video, we're diving deep into the secrets of the Bardo Thodol, exploring the 3 stages of the afterlife, the role of karma, and the ultimate test that awaits us all. If you've ever wondered what happens when we die, stay with me. This might just change the way you see life itself. And before we begin, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any deep dives into spirituality and consciousness. The Bardo Thodol, widely known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, is far more than just a manual for dying. It's a profound spiritual guide that maps out the journey of consciousness beyond death. Unlike Western perspectives that see death as an end, this ancient text reveals it as a transition, a doorway to higher states of awareness. It teaches that the way we navigate this passage determines whether we achieve liberation or remain bound to the cycle of rebirth. Originally written in the 8th century, the Bardo Thodol was designed to be read aloud to the dying, helping them recognize and embrace the true nature of their mind. It describes the different states, or bardos, that consciousness passes through after death. These transitions present both challenges and opportunities, moments where one can awaken to enlightenment or fall back into the illusions of existence. One of the text's most striking revelations is that what we experience after death is shaped by our own mind. The radiant light of pure consciousness appears, offering instant liberation to those who recognize it. Yet, for many, deeply ingrained, fears and attachments cloud this vision, pulling them back into the cycle of rebirth. The Bardo Thodol provides guidance on how to prepare for this moment, ensuring that when death arrives, it becomes a gateway to freedom rather than a trap. But this book is not just for the dying, it holds wisdom for the living as well. By understanding the nature of death, we gain deeper insight into life. The teachings encourage mindfulness, self-awareness, and a detachment from the illusions that keep us bound to suffering. In a way, to truly grasp life, one must first learn how to die. This ancient wisdom continues to resonate today as people seek deeper meaning beyond the material world. The secrets of the Bardo Thodol challenge us to ask, are we truly prepared for what comes next? And more importantly, how can we start preparing right now? The Bardo Thodol is said to have been revealed by Guru Rinpoche, also known as Padmasambhava, an enlightened master who played a crucial role in bringing Buddhism to Tibet. In the 8th century, he introduced powerful tantric teachings that emphasized direct experience over blind faith. His wisdom was so transformative that Tibetan Buddhists regard him as a second Buddha, one who not only taught about life's mysteries, but also about the profound journey after death. According to legend, Padmasambhava didn't just write the Bardo Thodol, he hid it. The text was concealed as a terma, a hidden treasure, meant to be discovered at the right time by those ready to receive its wisdom. It was later uncovered by a great spiritual master named Karma Lingpa in the 14th century. This method of safeguarding sacred knowledge ensured that it wouldn't be lost or misinterpreted over time, preserving its power for future generations. But why was this text so important? Because it wasn't just a guide for the dying, it was a manual for awakening. Padmasambhava understood that most people live in deep illusion, unaware of their true nature. The Bardo Thodol was meant to remind them, especially in the crucial moments after death, when the illusions of life dissolve and the mind has a rare chance to break free from suffering. Padmasambhava also emphasized that death and life are deeply connected. Preparing for death isn't about being morbid, it's about mastering life itself. By understanding what happens after death, we learn how to live with more awareness, purpose, and freedom. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition encourages deep meditation and spiritual practice, so that when the moment of death arrives, one is not lost in fear, but instead moves through the transition with clarity. So, if this knowledge is so ancient and powerful, why do so few people study it today? The answer lies in how modern society treats death as something to be feared and avoided. But what if, instead of running from it, we embraced it as the ultimate teacher? The Bardo Thodol suggests that by understanding death, we unlock the truth of existence itself. In Tibetan Buddhism, life and death are not seen as separate, but as part of an ongoing cycle of transformation. The Bardo Thodol describes 3 bardos, or transitional states, that every soul experiences after death. These states determine whether one attains liberation or remains bound to the cycle of rebirth. The bardos are not mere metaphysical concepts, they are deeply experiential. Understanding them allows individuals to navigate the afterlife with clarity, avoiding the confusion and fear that often trap souls in repetitive cycles. The word bardo itself means in-between state, referring to moments of profound transition. Just as life is filled with transitions, childhood to adulthood, waking to sleeping, the ultimate transition happens at death. The 3 post-death bardos described in the Bardo Thodol are Chikai Bardo, the moment of death, Chonyid Bardo, the bardo of visions, and Sidpa Bardo, the rebirth process. Each of these stages presents opportunities for enlightenment or entrapment, depending on one's awareness and preparation. Chikai Bardo, the moment of death. The first bardo occurs immediately upon death. As the physical body dissolves, the soul encounters the primordial clear light, a radiant, all-encompassing awareness that represents the true nature of existence. In this fleeting moment, one has a rare chance for instant liberation. If the soul recognizes this light as its own pure consciousness, it can merge with it, achieving enlightenment and escaping the cycle of rebirth. However, for most, this experience is overwhelming. Lifelong attachments, fears, and unfulfilled desires cloud the recognition of the clear light. Instead of embracing it, the soul instinctively recoils, seeking familiarity. This hesitation is what leads the consciousness into the next stage, the Chonyid Bardo, where the projections of the subconscious take form. This is why spiritual preparation during life is crucial. One must train the mind to embrace clarity rather than retreat into fear. Chonyid Bardo, the bardo of visions. As the soul moves beyond the moment of death, it enters a phase where the mind's deepest thoughts and emotions materialize into vivid hallucinations. In this bardo, one encounters both peaceful and wrathful deities, manifestations of one's own subconscious mind. These figures are neither external beings nor judgmental gods. They are symbolic reflections of the soul's internal state. For those who recognize these visions as mere projections, this phase becomes another doorway to enlightenment. However, for those caught in their fears and desires, the experience can be terrifying. Some may perceive these deities as threatening forces, leading to panic and suffering. This stage is where meditation practices such as recognizing the illusionary nature of reality, become essential. Those who have cultivated awareness in life can use this bardo to transcend suffering, while others may become trapped by their own unresolved emotions. Sidpa Bardo, the rebirth process. If liberation is not achieved in the previous bardos, the consciousness enters the Sidpa Bardo, where the forces of karma take control. The soul, still bound by attachments and desires, instinctively seeks a new body, drawn to a rebirth that reflects its past actions. At this stage, karmic energy becomes the guiding force. Those with peaceful, compassionate tendencies are drawn to higher realms, while those dominated by anger or greed may find themselves in lower existences. This phase explains why intentions, emotions, and actions in life shape future experiences. In Tibetan Buddhist belief, rebirth is not random. It is an automatic process influenced by the mind's habitual patterns. The moment of choosing a new body is said to be highly instinctual, with consciousness gravitating toward familiar energies. The process unfolds rapidly, and without mindfulness, one is swept into a new cycle without fully understanding the transition. Understanding the bardos allows for conscious navigation of death. By recognizing these stages, one can transform fear into awareness and suffering into liberation. But the real question remains, can we truly prepare for this journey while still alive? The Bardo Thodol suggests that mastering life is the key to mastering death. The Bardo Thodol describes the primordial clear light as the ultimate reality, pure infinite consciousness that exists beyond all illusion. At the moment of death, this radiant light appears, offering the soul an opportunity for instant liberation. If recognized and embraced, it leads directly to enlightenment, freeing the soul from the cycle of rebirth. This is considered the highest spiritual attainment, as it means complete union with the true nature of existence. However, most people fail to recognize this moment. The intense brightness of the clear light can be overwhelming, causing the soul to instinctively withdraw. Fear, attachment to the physical world, and unpreparedness lead many to seek something more familiar. Instead of merging with the light, they turn away, which ultimately pulls them deeper into the cycle of rebirth. This is why Tibetan Buddhism emphasizes spiritual preparation, so that when this moment arrives, one is ready to embrace it without hesitation. The Bardo Thodol teaches that the clear light is not something external, it is the true nature of the mind itself. But because most people identify with their body, thoughts, and emotions, they fail to recognize it when their physical form dissolves. Tibetan meditation practices, such as Dzogchen and Mahamudra, help individuals train their minds to perceive this light while still alive, making it easier to recognize after death. Interestingly, many accounts of near-death experiences, NDEs, describe a similar phenomenon. People often report encountering an overwhelming yet peaceful light, accompanied by a sense of unity and deep understanding. These descriptions strongly resemble the clear light of the Bardo Thodol, suggesting that this is a fundamental experience of the transition between life and death. Recognizing the clear light at the moment of death requires preparation, but the Bardo Thodol teaches that enlightenment is possible even before dying. The clear light is always present, but everyday distractions prevent most people from perceiving it. Meditation, mindfulness, and self-awareness help cultivate this recognition, making it easier to embrace when the time comes. Ultimately, the key to mastering death is mastering life itself. In Tibetan Buddhism, karma is the force that shapes not only our current life, but also our future rebirths. Every action, thought, and emotion creates an imprint on the consciousness, which influences where and how the soul is reborn. Unlike The idea of divine judgment karma is seen as a natural law. What we put into the world inevitably returns to us, whether in this life or the next. The Bardo Thodol teaches that understanding this law is crucial for those who wish to break free from the cycle of suffering. At the moment of death, the accumulated karma of a lifetime determines the direction of the soul's journey. If a person has cultivated wisdom, compassion, and self-awareness, their consciousness will naturally be drawn toward a higher state of existence. On the other hand, those who have lived with greed, hatred, or ignorance will be pulled into lower realms. This process is not a punishment, but rather the natural unfolding of cause and effect. The Bardo Thodol explains that in the Sidpa Bardo, the final stage before rebirth, the soul is irresistibly drawn toward a new life based on its karmic tendencies. This is why Tibetan Buddhist teachings emphasize the importance of purifying karma while still alive, through meditation, ethical living, and selfless actions. By consciously shaping our karma, we can influence not only this life, but also the transition beyond it. One of the most challenging aspects of karma is that it is often subtle and cumulative. Small daily actions, acts of kindness, moments of anger, choices driven by selfishness or generosity, gradually build the foundation of future experiences. The Bardo Thodol encourages individuals to develop awareness of their thoughts and actions, as even seemingly insignificant moments contribute to the karmic path. Ultimately, the teachings on karma serve as a reminder that we are responsible for our own destiny. Liberation is not about escaping karma, but transforming it. By consciously choosing wisdom and compassion, one can shift the trajectory of their soul's journey, not only in this life, but in all lives to come. The question remains, how can we start making those choices today? One of the greatest obstacles to achieving enlightenment in the afterlife is the mind's attachment to illusions. The Bardo Thodol teaches that fear and clinging are the primary forces that keep souls trapped in the cycle of rebirth. At the moment of death, the familiar world dissolves and the mind enters a state of pure potential. However, instead of surrendering to this transition, many souls instinctively hold on to their old identities, relationships, and desires, keeping them bound to suffering. Fear arises because the ego resists change. The dissolution of the physical body feels like the ultimate loss, triggering panic and confusion. In the Chonyid Bardo, where visions manifest, those who cannot recognize these illusions as projections of their own mind experience terror. They try to escape, but there is nowhere to run, only their own subconscious creating the reality they perceive. This is why Tibetan Buddhism teaches non-attachment during life, so that when death arrives, the soul can navigate the transition without fear. Attachment is another major barrier. Whether to loved ones, personal identity, or material possessions, the desire to hold on to what is familiar makes it difficult to move forward. In the Sidpa Bardo, souls are drawn back into rebirth because of unresolved emotions and cravings. They instinctively seek a new body, driven by habitual tendencies from their past life. This process happens automatically unless one has trained their mind to remain detached and aware. The solution, according to the Bardo Thodol, is mindfulness and preparation. Tibetan Buddhist practices encourage individuals to reflect on impermanence, meditate on the nature of consciousness, and cultivate a sense of inner peace. By letting go of fear and attachment before death, one increases the likelihood of recognizing the clear light and attaining liberation. This raises an important question. How much of our suffering in daily life is caused by the same forces? Fear and attachment do not only bind us after death, they shape our experiences while we are alive. The more we practice letting go now, the easier it will be to do so when the final moment arrives. What are we still holding on to that is keeping us from true freedom? The Bardo Thodol makes one thing clear. Spiritual practice is not just for monks or yogis. It is the key to navigating death and achieving liberation. What happens after we die is not random. It is shaped by the state of our mind at the moment of passing. Those who have spent their lives cultivating awareness, detachment, and wisdom will find it easier to recognize the clear light. Those who have lived in ignorance, driven by fear and attachment, will be pulled back into the cycle of rebirth. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools for preparing for this transition. Tibetan Buddhist traditions emphasize practices like Dzogchen and Mahamudra, which train individuals to recognize the true nature of their mind. By practicing deep states of awareness while alive, one becomes familiar with the luminous consciousness that appears after death. Advanced meditators can enter this state even before dying, giving them a greater chance of achieving enlightenment in the bardos. Beyond meditation, ethical living is equally important. The Bardo Thodol teaches that our karmic actions shape our afterlife experience. Compassion, generosity, and self-discipline create a lighter, freer consciousness, while greed, anger, and selfishness weigh the soul down. Many Tibetan Buddhist practitioners follow the 6 paramitas, perfections: generosity, discipline, patience, effort, meditation, and wisdom, as a guide to living in alignment with higher spiritual principles. Mantras and prayers are also used as preparation for death. Reciting the name of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, or the famous Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, is believed to purify negative karma and create a peaceful transition. Some traditions even teach that hearing these prayers in the bardos can help a lost soul recognize the illusions of their mind and move toward enlightenment. This is why Tibetan monks chant the Bardo Thodol for the deceased, to guide them through the afterlife with spiritual awareness. Ultimately, spiritual practice is not just about preparing for death. It transforms the way we live. When we cultivate mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering in the present moment. And when the time comes to face the great unknown, we will be ready, not with fear, but with clarity. The real question is, how can we start integrating these practices into our daily lives? The Bardo Thodol is not just a guide for the dead, it is a wake-up call for the living. It teaches that by understanding death, we can transform the way we live. Most people avoid thinking about their mortality, but Tibetan Buddhism encourages deep contemplation of impermanence. This is not meant to create fear, but to cultivate a sense of urgency and purpose. When we realize that everything is temporary, we stop wasting time on trivial concerns and start focusing on what truly matters. 1 of the most important lessons from the Bardo Thodol is that the mind is the creator of reality. The deities' visions and experiences in the afterlife are not external beings. They are projections of our own subconscious. This insight applies to life as well. Our fears, desires, and attachments shape how we perceive the world. By training the mind to recognize its own illusions, we gain the power to navigate both life and death with clarity. Another key takeaway is the importance of spiritual practice. The ability to recognize the clear light at death depends on the level of awareness we cultivate while alive. Meditation, mindfulness, and ethical living prepare the mind for this transition. Tibetan masters advise making these practices a daily habit, not as a religious duty, but as a way to develop inner freedom. Even simple actions, like practicing gratitude, reducing attachments, and reflecting on impermanence, can have a profound impact on how we experience life and death. Karma also plays a crucial role. Every thought, word, and action shapes our future experiences, both in this life and the next. The Bardo Thodol teaches that what we carry in our consciousness at death determines where we go next. This means that preparing for death is not about rituals or external beliefs. It is about mastering our thoughts and emotions. Living with kindness, wisdom, and self-awareness is the best way to ensure a peaceful transition when the time comes. Ultimately, the message of the Bardo Thodol is clear: death is not the end, and life is not random. We have the power to shape our destiny through our choices and awareness. Instead of fearing death, we should use it as motivation to live with greater meaning and intention. The real question is, how will we use this knowledge to change the way we live today? So now that you know what the Bardo Thodol teaches about death, rebirth, and enlightenment, the real question is, are you prepared for the journey? Most people go through life avoiding the topic of death, but Tibetan wisdom tells us that understanding it is the key to truly mastering life. Think about it. If everything we experience after death is shaped by our own mind, then isn't it crucial to start training our awareness now? What thoughts are you feeding? What attachments are holding you back? Every action, every habit, every moment of mindfulness today is preparing you for what comes next. But here's something even deeper. The Bardo Thodol isn't just about death. It's about waking up right now. Every challenge in life is like a mini Bardo, a transition where we either awaken or fall back into old patterns. Are you breaking free, or are you repeating the same cycles? If this video gave you a new perspective, let me know in the comments. Do you believe in life after death? And if you want more insights into spirituality and the mysteries of consciousness, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out. Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and remember, this life is just the beginning.